Today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show, we've got a little bit of a follow-up on a conversation we had yesterday regarding Pulaski County schools violating the law in order to advocate against the school choice amendment coming up on Kentucky's ballot. There's a little more to the story that developed late last night that I will bring you. On top of that, we have DUIs. You get a DUI, you get a DUI, you get 2 DUIs. Elected people in Kentucky just can't stop getting DUIs, apparently, as we have not one but 2 elected officials, one of which is a sheriff, getting not their first but their second charges of DUIs here in this great state. We'll talk about both these elected people, talk about what happened there, and then finally, I put a post on my social media asking a question that I've asked on this show many a times, and that is a simple explanation for what is the actual value to the taxpayer. What does it add to the taxpayers' lives that we're spending these billions upon billions and eventually trillions of dollars on electric vehicles, getting that a reality? What value does that actually add to the taxpayers' lives? Because taxpayers already can drive, as far as they want to, fill up every 300-400 miles and take 5 minutes or so to do it without needing to plan out their lives, plan out their trips, without needing to be intricate like they do with an electric vehicle where you have to plan your charging and everything else. And they're spending all this money to try to get more chargers in place and advance the technology and all these things just to make electric vehicles essentially perform just like gas vehicles. But what value? I mean, if taxpayers are spending money on it, shouldn't it be delivering then some value to their lives? So I asked that question. We'll go over exactly what the responses were to that from those who, of course, thought it was stupid that I ever asked. How dare I ever ask? And so we'll have all that and more today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. But as always, please make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. Please leave a review if you're listening to this on a podcasting platform. Do appreciate that. Please also share this out with others. The more people we have listening, the more motivated I am to deliver this fantastic content. At least I hope you think it's fantastic. If you don't think it's fantastic, but you just want to catch up on the Kentucky news, well, that's even more reason why you should tell people about it, because the more people that listen, the more resources that can be brought into the show, and the better the content could get if you don't like the content. So, keep that in mind. But so share this with others, get people listening to it, so that way we can continue to grow. But without further ado, let's dig into it. So let me give you this real quick synopsis of where we are with this Pulaski County Schools situation. So Pulaski County Schools decided to go ahead and use public resources, their Facebook pages, their sign out in front of the public schools, as well as their position within the community as the public school, to advocate against Amendment 2, telling people to vote no on Amendment 2, the school choice amendment here in Kentucky. And the Attorney General, after a lot of pressure from people, one of which is a national advocate and activist for school choice, Corey DeAngelis, came in and said, look, you're violating the law, and put pressure or asked for the Attorney General to make a ruling on whether or not they are violating the law. And the Attorney General turned around, put out a ruling that, in fact, Pulaski County Schools is violating the law. So they take down the posts, and then they say, no, but we're going to fight this. Then on top of that, you had Jacqueline Coleman, Lieutenant Governor Jacqueline Coleman, using her official social media accounts that are run through state resources to advocate for or against a constitutional amendment, something you cannot do if the law is to be interpreted. And so she's getting called out. Well, Corey DeAngelis put in a request, an open records request to the Pulaski County Schools, asking for something specific, and their response will literally blow your mind. But first I want to read you what he specifically asked for. And this is really, really important. And it's really important because to understand what he asked. Because that is what they're going to search for within their records. They're going to be very specific about what they search for. And so his request was, he wants to see all communication, internally and externally, between, from, or to school district staff / the board in reference to the education, to the Education Opportunities Constitution Amendment, ballot question 2, or anything that references Amendment 2, question 2, yes on 2, no on 2, etc. So it's pretty straightforward. He's asking for any talk that happened within the schools regarding the constitutional amendment and regarding yes on Amendment 2. Now obviously, their interpretation of that is not going to be necessarily as charitable as others, but let's just take it at face value. Let's say we're going to look at exactly what he's asking for, okay? Well, Constitutional Amendment 2 has only existed, the legislation over the amendment, over a school choice amendment, has only existed since the beginning of this year. Ballot question 2, as specifically referenced by Corey DeAngelis. So if I'm going to go ahead and insert or provide here a request, an open records request, or I think Corey DeAngelis, I think maybe somebody else had put it in the request, but Corey DeAngelis was the one who posted about it. So let me be clear there. But anyways, so, but they put in this request and they're very specifically asking about Amendment 2, yes on 2, no on 2. The school choice amendment has only been assigned Amendment 2 for like 4 months. Keep this in mind, only 4 months. Okay, so what does the school district say why they cannot provide these records? They say, even narrowed to the parameters in the request with the specific phrases, the search results consist of approximately 18,743 emails. 18,743 emails over the last. Keep in mind, question 2 has only been called question 2 as quoted. He quotes what he wants them to search, or she, whoever put in this request. And the quote was specifically Amendment 2, question 2, yes on 2, no on 2. Just searching those 4 terms, they come up with over 18,700 emails in 4 months. Y'all, school's not even in session. Okay? Hasn't been in session for like the last 4 months. I mean, this is 156 emails a day, at least. 7 days a week, working on Sunday. 18,700 emails. Holy cow! This is a ballot question. This is something that is supposed to be a free and fair election for Kentuckians to vote on. And they're emailing about it over 18,000. Imagine this. Imagine you had a school board that was emailing in regards to imagine you had a school board. Let me put this another way. Okay, take away the amendment question. Okay, let's imagine you had a school board who came out on a election for county school board and said, don't vote for John, vote for Karen. And came out and said, vote for Karen for school district. That's what the school came out and said. And then you asked, which is obviously a violation, but then you asked for all their emails where they discussed whether or not they're going to vote for her. And they said, oh, sorry, we can't do that. We can't provide you those emails because there's 18,000 of them. Even what? Now, you may be asking, well, why can they not provide it? Because there's 18,000 of them. Well, the law, as it's wrote, the open records law says that if it is too arduous of a task, if it's too much of a burden on the public department to provide to the individuals the records that they're asking for, well, then they don't have to provide the records. And the school's reasoning here is that they need to go through and redact a lot of information. They'll have to, because you have to redact, personal information. You have to redact HIPAA violation things. You have to go through and redact a lot of things. The only thing that are allowed to be left on there is, official people's names and their email addresses and then what they say. But like details and data, personal information, like you have to redact that. And they're saying that because you're asking for 18,000 emails, we don't have the manpower to go through and redact all this. It's too much of an arduous task. So it seems like a pretty specific question, though. I just want to know, anytime you guys talked about yes on 2, like, well, we can't provide that to you because we talk about it so much. And one of the reasonings they put into their response of why they don't want to provide it was that, well, you see, sometimes we mention yes on 2, and then we talk about a lot of other things all in one thread. And so we had to provide you the entire thread because you said yes on, we talked about the Second Amendment here, and then we talked about a bunch of other things, and we got to redact that has nothing to do with it. So that's too much work as well, which provides an obvious opportunity for any department that wants to get around the open records request. If that's actually what you want to get away with and do, anybody who wants to get around that, well, all you need to do is make sure your entire email about anything is all in one big chain. Between you and this person, you just have one constant and consistent email chain that just builds and builds and builds over time until it's got thousands of messages and emails in the chain. And then when anybody asks for anything, you'd be like, oh, sorry, can't provide it. See, the problem is it's a part of a chain that involves thousands of emails. And so I can't, oh, geez, that's a lot of work. Can't do it, sorry. Absolutely ridiculous. And you know, one of the arguments we hear from public school advocates that think this school choice amendment will destroy public schools is that public schools are accountable where private schools aren't. Well, keep in mind with a private school, if they don't do or say or whatever what you ask them to, if they don't provide you with records if you ask for them and you believe you need to have them and they don't have a good reason not to give them to you, if they don't provide you with, and also by the way, under the way the open records laws are wrote, a lot of these schools, even private schools, would probably become subject to open records requests because any even a private entity that receives over 25% of its funding through state purposes is now subjected to open records requests. That is a thing, but putting that to the side. The point is that even in this situation, if you ask them, if you're a customer, you don't like what they're teaching your kids, you're trying to find out what they're teaching your kids and they won't tell you, well, guess what? You go somewhere else. You take away your business. They have a profit incentive to be responsive to you. But when you're at a public school and you say, hey, what are you teaching my kids? And if they don't want to answer, they don't want to provide you the records, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're going to sit there and take it. It's just like the DMV. You're going to sit there and take it. No matter how they treat you, you're going to sit there and take it because you got nowhere else to go and they know it. So what is their incentive? To give 2 cares about what you want. But even in that argument, let's say you say, oh no, they're more accountable. Just over the last year and a half alone, the Attorney General's office has found that public schools in Kentucky have violated open meeting law requirements and open records request requirements over 17 times. And to find this violation, not only do they have to get a request for open meeting or a complaint about open meetings or an open records, but then they have to deny it, and then the Attorney General has to pick it up and issue a ruling on it. And the people asking for this information have to know it exists, know the way to file it, and know the way to file the appeals. But if they don't know that, they're not going to file those things. So this is just 17 times that we know about. Think about all the times that they've done things illegal, wrong, or that they shouldn't have done, or haven't followed open meeting laws, and nobody said or did anything about it because they didn't know they could. They want to talk to us about accountability? You can go elsewhere with that garbage. Moving on, though, to DUIs. Apparently, Kentucky politicians having a hard time not drinking the sauce and driving. Hard time with it. So our first DUI story comes out of Robertson County, Kentucky. It is Kentucky's smallest county. And their sheriff there has not been charged with his first, but his second DUI after he allegedly overturned a tractor while intoxicated. So this is what happened. He was reported by the Robert County Fire Chief Jamie Fulton because he called dispatch because Gray, the sheriff there, Sheriff Gray, was allegedly acting erratic and possibly intoxicated, and the fire department reported that he had flipped a tractor and they had gotten it back upright and it was on the side of the road. Then, later on down the road apparently, a trooper found the tractor on Main Street and saw Gray then traveling on the yellow line. So he pulled over the tractor. Apparently, this is how I'm reading it. He put the trooper, the Kentucky State Police trooper, pulled Gray over and conducted a traffic stop and reported that he smelled of alcohol and did a blood test and charged him with a DUI. So this is his second DUI. And he got it for driving a tractor while drunk on Main Street, okay? But you may ask, what about his first DUI? Well, how did he get that one? Well, he got that one not too long ago when he got into a conflict with the public school resource officer in his cruiser, and he apparently was drunk. Allegedly was drunk. So he got a DUI for being, alleged DUI here, for being drunk and getting into an altercation with the school resource officer while driving a cruiser. And then we got another DUI for driving a tractor drunk through downtown. Allegedly. But he's not the only Kentucky politician getting DUIs recently. Now you maybe think to yourself, wow, a sheriff getting a DUI, that's pretty extreme. And keep in mind what would happen if you or I got charged with a DUI or anything like that. We'd have our licenses taken away. We'd be fired, jobs taken away. But of course, an elected sheriff, that's a lot harder of a thing to handle. Of course, if he had any kind of honor, I would say he should just go ahead and step down at this point. He clearly cannot execute his duties without being drunk, allegedly drunk. Can't execute his duties, so he should just go ahead and step down, honestly. But here's another one here. We got a state legislator, this one Democrat out of Louisville, Chester Burton. She also getting charged now with her second DUI, so it's a double dip DUI day. I'm just going to read this right here from the article. This is from WHAS 11. Funny, before I read on, we have her booking photo for where she was booked. That is in this article that I'm going to read from WHAS 11. It does look like her current booking photo. I could be way mistaken. And I only bring this up because it's from the jail, the Louisville Metro Detention Center. And she's wearing like a face mask underneath her chin. So it's just funny that we have somebody getting charged with a DUI, Democrat, and when I describe to you what happened, you're going to be like, ooh, that isn't very safe. But so concerned about safety and sickness that she's got a COVID mask. She can't let that virtue signal down, of course. But let's go ahead and read this article here. So, Kentucky State Rep Beverly Chester Burton has been arrested and charged with a DUI. Arrest records state that Shively police officers witnessed Chester Burton driving into the wrong lane on Gars Lane and then stop her car, disrupting traffic around 1 a.m. Tuesday morning. Chester Burton then backed up into the correct lane and then parked her car in the middle of the road. The officers walked up to the vehicle to see if Chester Burton was needing assistance, and when she got out of the vehicle, officers smelled a strong odor of alcohol coming from her. Chester Burton allegedly told officers she was coming from Frankfort and that people were asking her what was going on in Shively. So she apparently claimed that she was on her way back from Frankfort doing official work, probably threw out the "Do you know who I am" card. In fact, we know she does because of what happens later on in the story. And talking about how she's just out there doing important legislative work. People are asking her what's going on in Shively. She's out there doing the hard research at 1 a.m., apparently in the local bars. Look, if you want to find out what the people think and want, you got to get into their mind. You got to really integrate. You got to go deep undercover and see. While Chester Burton maybe appeared to be drunk, perhaps, what really was going on here, she was just, obviously on a undercover operation to better understand her district quite clearly. But anyways, continuing on now, officers questioned Chester Burton about alcohol consumption, but allegedly avoided giving an answer. She tried getting in her vehicle a few times, but was stopped by police because they felt she was intoxicated. The Democrat state rep told police she wanted her phone to call Shively's police chief, and then attempted to get into her back seat, but almost fell. The arrest... Not only is she like, do you know who I am? I'm calling your chief. I'm not drunk. And she goes to get in her back seat and she falls. So she's driving in the wrong lane. It's 1 a.m. on a Tuesday. She's parked in the middle of the road. She's fallen all over, apparently, trying to get at her phone, trying to pull out the "Do you know who I am" card. And and so after she almost fell, the arresting officers go to arrest her. And Chester Burton, they try to get her to take a field sobriety test or a breathalyzer test, but refused. She allegedly told officers she would beat it like she did the last one. After asking again to call the chief, she was denied and arrested. As the police were taking her down to Louisville Metro Corrections, she allegedly told the officers, "These guys act like they haven't ever been to a birthday party." These guys act like they haven't ever been to a birthday party. Oh my gosh, what kind of birthday parties? Well, you know, the lobbyists and them, they do keep the alcohol flowing. I guess I don't know whose birthday it was, but it wouldn't be the first time Frankfurt's had a fair amount of booze flowing on somebody's birthday. I'm just saying, you know, we're the bourbon state for a reason. Half the votes you see, especially in the last few days up there in the Capitol, half the legislators are drunk. By the time you get to 10 o'clock at night, those last few days, I won't even say half. I'd say the majority of them on the floor are probably a little lit, making votes. They drink a lot there in Frankfurt. That is no lie. Now, this is the second time, going back to the article here, this is the second time Chester Burton has been charged with DUI. She was also arrested on the suspicion of drunk driving in December 2020 after crashing her car while in a White Castle parking lot. So there you go. We got two, not one, but two Kentucky elected politicians out here doing the hard work of getting drunk and pretending to represent their constituents, or allegedly getting drunk. We'll see how the cases shape out. You know, you can't legally say that until they've necessarily been convicted per se, you know, but that's just all part of it. So yeah, I guess that maybe that's the reason why I never won one of my elections. I ran in 2 elections, did well, but didn't win. Maybe the reason why I didn't win is because I don't have any DUIs. Maybe that's a prerequisite. I don't know. Anyways, moving on from this, I posted, I mentioned this on the show often. I posted it online, and here's the question I posted. I said, what exactly is the benefit of electric vehicles to the taxpayer? They're spending billions upon billions in cash handouts to companies and infrastructure projects, not to mention the tax credits. All of that is to try and get EVs to have range, cost, and refill time similar to a combustion engine. They may be the future way down the road, but taxpayers' funds should be spent delivering value to the taxpayers' lives. What value do EVs deliver that gas cars do not? Why is it worth billions? Simple question, simple question. Now, obviously, anybody reading that, one, I mentioned cash handouts to corporations and everything else, and I mentioned tax credits. I was mainly talking about tax credits, of course, to these companies, but there's also tax credits in order to get people to buy electric vehicles in order to incentivize them to buy it. And so I posed this question out here, and the answers I got ranged in pretty much 2 categories. One was about the environment, we'll go into, and the other one was about how I must hate the middle class somehow. We'll take a look at those arguments. So first to the environment, okay? Now, I thought about when I made this post, heading this off at the pass, but I guess I just figured out people should be smart enough to know this, but apparently they're not. So this claim, let's go to the environmental claim. First, in order for the environmental claim that this is somehow worth what we're spending, you need to prove a lot of things that have yet to be proven. The first thing you got to prove is that not only is global warming, the warming of the planet, directly caused by the actions of human beings, but then you would also have to, once you establish that, establish that by the degree of which Americans, if Americans, let's say, go carbon neutral, that's our goal. Get America carbon neutral, okay? Let's say that's what you want to do. You then have to show how much that would actually affect the outcome of where we're going. So you got to establish that we're causing it, then establish exactly what the contributors are, and then establish if America takes out those contributors, would that be enough to change the direction? Because we know that there's greater polluters like India and China that are nowhere near where we're at. And so we have to take that into consideration as well. What will be the actual outcome of what we're doing? Then you got to answer a second question. Because remember, we're not talking about just the planet warming that's bad, right? What we're talking about is spending money to deliver value, that we need to switch to electric vehicles in order to stop the planet from warming. Well, your next thing you have to prove now, first, when you come to spending money, is how much money will global warming cost us? If 100 years from now it warms by 2 degrees, let's say, or whatever the estimates are that they can cook up, tell me exactly how that will cost us money, where it will cost us money as citizens, how much per citizen will that cost us? You have to establish the cost. Then you also now have to establish, so you've established that we're causing it, you've established that we can make a difference here in America, then you have to establish that financially speaking, the damages done by global warming will be X amount, so if we can spend this amount to avoid it, it's a quote-unquote investment that delivers value to the taxpayer. But now you got to prove a fourth thing. Now you have to prove that electric vehicles are the way we're going to get there. And when it comes to environmental impact, there is very little to no evidence. In fact, a lot of evidence points the other direction, that electric vehicles have a net positive impact on the environment when compared to combustion engine vehicles, because the batteries, what goes into making the batteries, uses a lot of caustic mining, it uses a lot of precious minerals and materials, and the manufacturing of those batteries and of the vehicles in general are greater than that of combustion engine vehicles. The other thing is they weigh more. Electric vehicles weigh a lot more because of the batteries. So you also have to think about the wear and tear that this is now doing to our roads, and how more often will we have to repave? How often do we got to put down? And then finally, you got to go into how are we producing the electricity that fills the vehicles up? Is it being produced through a carbon neutral type process? So if you believe in climate change, you believe in all that, and you say, no, we need to be carbon neutral, whatever that means. Well, how are we going to produce power? And do we produce that power in a way that's carbon neutral, that weighs out the costs and benefits of gas? Has anybody looked at that? No, of course nobody's looked at that. So when it comes to the environmental side of this argument, there is scant evidence that electric vehicles deliver any value there. Scant at all. No, instead, actually what we see is that electric vehicles probably do nothing to the environment, if not maybe make it worse. The only thing they can help with is air pollution within heavily populated cities. But that's not carbon, that's not global warming, that is air pollution within heavily populated cities. And if that's the case, therefore those heavily populated cities may look at doing something in order to help bring their emissions down within the cities. But that would be something they just have to figure out themselves and exactly come to the conclusion of. But if that's your goal, hey, we just need these inner cities, we want to get the pollution down in these cities, well, the response to that wouldn't be to spend billions of dollars putting in electric chargers in eastern Kentucky, something that they're literally doing right now, putting chargers all across America in these rural areas where nobody's going to buy an electric vehicle in the first place. If you're concerned about air quality within cities themselves, well, then your policies should be directed to that. But that's not what they're doing. So you now run into the environmental claim hits a lot of walls here because it just hasn't been proven enough. But here's the other thing that people try to argue was that, oh, well, by even asking this question, I just hate poor people and I only love corporations, which doesn't make a lot of sense. And if you think I'm joking, let me read to you one of these quotes. It goes, hashtag, Republicans believe that tax cuts and incentives should only go to the top 1%, corporations and oil companies. Screw the middle class and any other industry. So first, you all heard what I posted. I'm literally talking about them giving billions in cash handouts to companies. Companies in the top 1%, corporations. Like, what are you talking about? A tax cuts incentive should only go to the 1% corporations and oil companies. Screw the middle class. I'm literally complaining about the middle class and the working class getting money taken and stolen from them out of their pockets and then redistributed to these elitist leftists that are peddling this electric vehicle lie and are trying to get in on this green energy lie and make a buck off of it, while having taxpayer funds stolen from taxpayers at gunpoint and then used for those ends. A redistribution of wealth, per se. And so me talking about, hey, I'm complaining about the fact we gave Ford, one of the biggest companies in the world, billions of dollars in cash to build electric vehicle battery plants in America. Talking about Kentucky specific there. And you're going to call me the one who doesn't care about the middle class and the working class? But that's because, we asked that question. It's a good question. It's one that if you actually ask and you think about for a second, you struggle to answer. So instead, you have to dismiss the entire question under a premise that it has to do with somehow only liking corporations, even though it's calling out money we're giving to corporations, because that's the only way it works in your worldview. And if you have to actually answer it, well then, just then, you might be challenged a little bit. You can't handle that. And the reason why I ask this question is I think it's important is because this is what I call a razor blade project. For those of you who've read 1984, you know exactly what I'm talking about. In the book, 1984, there's this ongoing motif about razor blades. Razor blades are really hard to come by, and they're so hard to come by because the metal used in razor blades are used a lot in these wars. And there's these wars being fought around the globe, far away from the cities and the place where the book is taking place. And the front lines really don't move, right? It's just, it moves a few miles in one direction, a few miles back in another direction. And the sides change ever so often. And that's pretty much it as far as who's fighting who and why. And that's it. That's the entire thing. And in the movie, this guy's being reprogrammed by the party, the political party. And he asks, why are we in these, what's up with the razor blades and stuff? And they're like, well, it's for the war. And he goes, but the war never moves. We don't gain or lose anything. They said, well, we need something to expend our extra resources into to create a sense of scarcity amongst our citizens so they turn to us to provide for them. If the citizens have too much, if they're able to provide for themselves, if they have the ability to rise to their own labor and it doesn't need to be siphoned off into some project where it just gets wasted, well, they're harder to control because they'll have more of their own money, which creates more of their own independence, and we can't have that. That's why I go so hard against things like these electric vehicles push. Because while I do not hate electric vehicles, I don't hate people who buy them. I think there's obviously a market for them. I think that's mainly city-based people, and it's households that have higher than average incomes, that want to have one vehicle for road trips, that maybe one of the people drive, and then the other vehicle the other person drives is basically to and from work. And they like the technology in it. It makes them feel fancy. They're quick. I understand all of that. All of that. I'm not against that. What I'm against is a razor blade project where we're literally spending billions of dollars to deliver nothing to nobody in actual value, but all to solve some far-off problem that nobody's exactly quantified or told us why we need to solve it in the first place. Well, y'all, that's what I got time for today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Thank you all so much for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow. I hope you have a great rest of your day.